Mike Dell's World, number 422 for November 16th, 2025.
When I was a young boy, there wasn't any internet. There wasn't any World Wide Web. There wasn't any egghead sending you texts saying those are the same thing. You don't have to say internet and World Wide Web. They're the same thing. There weren't any video games when I was a boy. Well, there was Pac-Man. That was a game, I guess. And Asteroids. Wizard of War. Scramble. Defender was a hell of a lot of fun. Those were what we called video games. Did I say we didn't have video games? Because that would have been a mistake. But there is one thing you have now that we didn't have when I was a boy that I wish we did.
Mike Dell's World. Of course, if you guys recognize the voice there, that was Brett Butt, who is a famous comedian in Canada and also the creator of Corner Gas, which is a Canadian sitcom, which was absolutely my favorite sitcom of all time. And he did a podcast for a while, so I kind of lifted his intro, except for I finished the last with Mike Dell's World. Anyway, so yeah, today we're going to talk about radio. And I'm talking broadcast radio. And another nice thing about being up here in northern Michigan is we don't really have big radio groups up here. We don't have Clear Channel. We don't have, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of different big conglomerate radio groups, but the vast majority of the radio stations around here are locally owned and locally operated. They do play some syndicated shows, especially the talk stations. They play some definite syndicated stuff, but there's also some local programming, which a lot of places don't have anymore. At least not any of the small town areas. I mean, I would say, I guess that's probably not true. There's probably at least one station everywhere, but all these radio groups up here are pretty locally owned. The big one in town, WTCM, and of course the call sign stands for Traverse City, Michigan. WTCM AM 580 and FM 103.5 with other translator stations all over the place. I won't go into the super geeky details, but 580 is a 50,000 watt directional AM station that reduces power at night. So during the day, it's 50,000 watts, and its signal is directional towards the northeast, which makes it kind of nice pretty much anywhere north of Traverse City, and even into the eastern Upper Peninsula, and I'm assuming southern Ontario. You can listen to WTCM. I'll talk about another station here in town too, but at night they flip it down to 1100 watts, so it doesn't get out very, very far. That 4-tower array that makes it directional is right out by my folks' place, my mom's house. I remember when they were building that array. It was fun watching them build that. But they've got 4, I don't know how tall they are, a couple 100 feet, 300-foot towers, something like that. And it's very distinctive when you're driving around the area. You can see the box towers there west of town up on the hill. It's a little bit away from Green Hill. Green Hill is the main big hill up on Silver Lake Road, And you get over that and past the Crown Golf Course, turn up Secor Road, and that transmitter array is off on the right. The towers are probably 100 yards apart, and there's 4 of them in kind of a box pattern. And somehow that makes it directional. I don't know. I guess I do understand the theory behind it, but it's very techie geeky. But yeah, you can definitely during the day hear them, just all the way up, the northern half of the Lower Peninsula and the eastern half of the Upper Peninsula. And yeah, it's quite a station, and they play a lot of the syndicated stuff. They were the home of Rush Limbaugh. Now I don't know what they have on from 12 to 3. I haven't really listened too much, but they, they had Dan Bongino on there until he became the assistant director of the FBI, and I forget who the other guys were they had on there that took over for Rush when Rush passed away. But they had them on there for a while. But, they have the usual, conservative talk radio suspects in the afternoon. But in the morning, they have a local show, a Ron Jolly show, and then Vic McCarty show. And that goes basically from 7 until noon, those 2 shows. And those are definitely local, and it's very cool. And on the weekends, they have some buy your time radio shows. I don't know if in radio, on some of the smaller stations, you can buy an hour or 2 on the weekends and put on your own radio show. So there's a couple of those. I think there's like an estate planning show and some sort of automotive show. And Leo Laporte used to have his syndicated talk, the Tech Guy show. I think they have Kim Commando on there. She's a national talker on the weekend. But, kind of a interesting setup. And right now they're on AM 580. 580 is an actual, really good frequency on AM. The lower the frequency, the better. And so they're down at 580, but they started out in 1941. They were Traverse City's first commercial radio station, and they were on 1370. But that only lasted a little bit of time before they bumped to 1400 kilohertz or 1.4 megahertz. From 1941 until 1982. I was in high school when they made the switch to 580. And at the time before the switch, they were simulcasting their FM signal. And WTCM FM is the big country station here in town, which is co-located with WTCM AM in the Paul Bunyan building, which is a kind of smallish looking building right on Front Street, Traverse City. And also in that building is WKLT, the rock station. So, and that's a pretty recent thing, but I'll get to that in a bit. But TCM FM, when did that come in? I'm just looking through some of my fact sheet here. I want to say it was a little bit later on. 1975. There we go. I believe that started. But another thing that company, it's Midwestern Broadcasting. That's a locally owned group by the Biedermans. Les Biederman started the station, and then Ross Biederman took over, and I think he's retired now, and somebody else is running it, but it's still owned by the family. And they also, have WATT in Cadillac, WATZ in Alpena, WMBM in Petoskey, or they started it, and that got switched. I'll tell you something cool about that, too. But, so they had quite a few stations. They also started the first TV station here in Traverse City, WPBM or PBN, Channel 7. And my mother used to work there when she was in high school. She worked as a receptionist at the TV station up there. And then I worked at the TV station for a couple of years as a master control guy on the weekends and evenings, putting in the commercials and helping with the news and whatever. But that was all part of the Midwestern Broadcasting family. And here I forget when this happened. In fact, I'll have to look. WKLT, which was known as Double Rock KLT for a while because they had two transmitters, and they were owned by a different group, but Ross bought them up a few years ago. A good friend of mine, Omelette is his name, Steve Nortzman, and Omelette on the air. And he was working for KLT, and when they ran into hard times, he jumped over to another station owned by another friend of mine, The Bear, 98.1. And he was over there for a couple of years, and then when Midwestern bought WKLT, they brought him back. And now he's teamed up with his former morning show guy, Finster, I guess his name. Sean is his name. I haven't really met Sean, but the Omelette and Finster show, it's one of those rock station things. I filled in for the news guy a couple times on his show, just because. Why not? It's kind of fun. But anyway, so KLT is now also in the Paul Bunyan building, but Midwestern also has WCCW, which has two stations as well, as an AM and an FM. WCCW AM was the ESPN Sports talker. They're at 1320, I think. And now they're WTCM Gold. They play old country music on AM, which is kind of cool. You riding around in the car, I kind of like listening to that because it's country music from the 50s, 60s, 70s. And that, I guess, is going pretty good. Jack O'Malley, who was the morning guy on the country station for, at least 20 or 30 years. And then he became a congressman for 2 terms down in Lansing, a state congressman or state representative, I guess you call it, in the state house. And then he came back, and now he's the morning show guy on WTCM Gold, which is CCW AM. And then CCW FM is the oldies station. And what's funny about that now is, I guess I'm getting old. They're playing a lot of the stuff I remember as current. The old joke with WCCW FM was they bought all their music in the 70s and then just they don't change any of the music. They just change what they call their format as it gets longer, But that's always funny. But WCCW stands for Cherry Capital of the World, and but they're part of the Midwestern group. And I know there's at least a couple other stations. By the way, this is not going to be a comprehensive list. This is just going to be what I know about. But WCCW, the thing I remember is there's a guy named Lynn McNett, and his, what was his on-air name? I forget. Michael O'Shea. There we go. I remember him for the longest time. He was kind of the personality behind CCW. He's since passed away. But, I remember him when I was a kid, listening to him. And there was a guy on WTCM AM, Merlin Dummerow, And he was there right from the beginning. I think he was he signed on in 1941 with the station. And he would do a thing called Farm and Orchard Time every day at noon. And it reminded me of the guy on WKRP in Cincinnati, the news guy. I can't think of his name right now, the one that had the fake walls in his office. But anyway, so Merlin was kind of that way, but he was cooler. And he retired probably at least 10 years ago. And I went to school with his kid, Dale. And my mom knew him when she worked at the TV station, because he had something to do with that as well. And they used to call him Zeke. I don't know why he got that nickname. But, there's a whole bunch of other stations. It's kind of crazy, flipping through the AM band or the FM band. Well, the AM band isn't that crowded. There's like 4 or 5 stations. But on the FM band, I swear it's every little bit. There's also a couple of public radio stations here. There's Interlochen Public Radio, which I had talked about in a previous episode, but its claim to fame was Kate Patello's, their morning DJ on the classical station. And they also have a news station, so they have 2 different frequencies. And then WCMU radio out of Mount Pleasant for Central Michigan University. They also have 2 stations here. They got translators here. They're all over the state, but they have 2 translators here in Traverse City. One is their news talk NPR station, and then the other one's another classical. So we have lots of classical. Plus, there's a whole bunch of religious broadcasting stations. The old 1400 frequency that WTCM AM was on got sold to a religious broadcaster, and I don't know if it's the same transmitter, but it's the same antenna that they used way back in the day on that station. But yeah, we have, if you're into listening to radio, there's a lot of radio around here, and some of it's even local. And that's, kind of the problem with the radio business. Again, I've talked about this a long time ago in previous episodes, but, a lot of it, they listen to the consultants and they have the playlists and they're playing syndicated, even the DJs. Around here there are some DJs, not a lot, but there are some. WKLT has live DJs, I know, at least during most of the day. I don't know what they do at night. The country station has live DJs throughout the day. The AM station, of course, has live programming during the day, during the morning. But like I said, I'm not sure. I frankly don't listen to a lot of it anymore. I get in the vehicle, and most of the time it's a podcast. Sorry, I had to take a drink there. But, most of the time when I'm driving around, it's that. But if I just want to go for a ride, and sometimes I'll just take the dog and just go drive around out in the woods. And then I'll put on WTCM Gold and listen to old country. That's kind of fun. And, the AM has a certain sound quality to it that I guess you wouldn't call it quality, but it's an attribute that just sort of reminds me of the old days. And always wanted to get into antique radios. There's an outfit around here that restores old radios, but I'd like to get one and try to restore it myself. And I'd probably just put it on TCM Gold and that'd sound really cool on a 1940s floor model radio of some sort. I do have a pretty cool radio I got from my grandfather, a Zenith Transoceanic. It's a shortwave AM FM radio, and it has a little thing that flips up, and there's a wheel there so you can figure out the time zones, and a little map of where the time zones are. So if you're listening to Radio Moscow. You can see what time zone they're in and whatever. It's kind of cool, but I don't know how much shortwave is even out there anymore either. Again, radio is, podcasting and YouTube and all this other stuff is sort of eclipsing a lot of radio for a lot of people. But, and I'm kind of one of them. I still, love the magic of radio. And I am a ham radio operator. And again, we're going to have an episode about that coming up. But, there's a little bit of difference. But, even ham radio is kind of dying. A lot of the local VHF repeaters and whatnot are pretty well not very busy anymore like they used to be in the 80s and 90s because everybody's got a pocket computer and can communicate with the entire world with their phone, and phone I use in air quotes because it's not really a phone, it's a pocket computer. It just happens to have a phone function. But, so the world is changing, but broadcasting in this area is seemingly alive and well. And, back in the day, when I worked at the TV station, they had to have somebody there 24/7. Even with automation, there was always at least the master control person in the station at night to monitor the transmitters. And, we had to have a general radio telephone license, which wasn't hard to get. You just had to get one and, to operate the station. And same thing with the radios. But now there's all kinds of unattended transmitters all over the place and master control for the TV stations. Well, at least the ones on the hill here, because it's an ABC, NBC combined now. They do, they have two different stations out of there, but they have multiple channels, with digital, they can have multiple channels on each of the transmitters. And I don't believe there's a person in the building after a certain hour. I think after the 11 o'clock news, it goes on automation and nobody's there until the morning news. So there's a few hours there where there's just nobody in the building. But when I used to work there, I would work the overnight. So, after the 11 o'clock news, everybody left and it was just me in the building. I'd take hourly checks on the two transmitters that we had. They were both remote transmitters, but we had a remote control set up and all that. So, and nowadays I don't think they do that. And master control is no longer local. Their master control is in Flint, and the person that's operating the station is operating 10 or 12 stations around the state remotely from Flint. So way different than it used to be. I used to enjoy that. It was kind of fun. Of course, we would play in the middle of the night. They'd play this news program from NBC. And it was 25 minutes of nothing for me to do every half hour. And then I would run a 2-minute local break and then go back to the network. And that's what I did most of the night. So a lot of the times I was watching Star Trek Next Generation, which we had on videotape on one of the side monitors. And I'd be watching episodes of that. Except for when I had to do a break and a little alarm clock that would go off about a minute before the break and make sure I have all my commercials in and, trigger the break, do the IDs and send it back to the network. But I was there and I looked at the transmitters and the lights. You also had to monitor the lighting system. It was remote. But, if one of the lights went out, it would indicate on the panel, and then I had a 800 number to call the FAA to let them know that a light's out on the tower, and they'd put out a NOTAM for the airplanes to say, hey, the tower lights are out on this tower here. And yeah, it was a whole thing. But one of the cool stories, there was this phenomenon because all these remote transmitters were connected via microwave. And that's just really super high frequency signals that went between towers. And there was like 3 hops up to the Sheboygan transmitter, which was, way up north by the UP. And so, but from our tower at the station, we could watch Channel 4 out of Sheboygan. We could see it off air because we had 500-foot tower. And then we'd also watch the Channel 7 transmitter, which was down in Harrietta. It's, half hour south of Traverse City. So I had a monitor for each. And another interesting thing, side note, there's another Channel 4 NBC in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So that's why, Channel 4 was way up north because of that. So I'm going into the half-hour break, and when I went into the break, Channel 7 was playing the commercials I was playing, and then I looked up at the Channel 4 monitor, and it was playing different commercials. I'm like, well, that's weird. How did they get different commercials? And then just about that same time, I got an alert that the transmitter in Sheboygan went down. And what had happened is they had a power outage, and the generator didn't kick on like it was supposed to. So they had a power outage up at Channel 4, but I didn't notice it on air because I was picking up the Milwaukee station on the Channel 4 monitor. And like I said, I only noticed it because the commercials were different. And then the monitoring system finally caught up and told me the transmitter was down. But that was quite entertaining. And one other adventure in broadcasting, it was Christmas Eve, and I actually volunteered to do a shift on Christmas Eve, which was fine. We did our, family Christmas on Christmas Eve, and then we had another one on Christmas Day with the other side of the family. So, me being up all night running a TV station wasn't a huge deal, but I had missed there was this farm program that played at like 6:30 in the morning. So, who's going to be watching that at 6:30 in the morning on Christmas Day? But I had to record it off the satellite at, it was like 2 in the morning. So that was some of the other things we did is, we would record syndicated programming. And this farm show was supposed to go. It was their holiday special, whatever. And I missed the recording somehow. So I didn't have anything to play from 7 to 8 in the morning. I could have thrown anything in there, I guess, and nobody would have noticed. But I thought to myself, well, I don't know. Maybe, let's see what other stations that program was on, and maybe I could get it from one of them somehow. And it turned out that WGN in Chicago played it, and they played it an hour and a half early. Hour and a half earlier. So I went into the production manager's office, and they had cable TV, and we had WGN on the cable. And at the appropriate time, I recorded their version of it. And then all I had to do was take their commercials out and put our station ID over top of their station ID. And I was able to pull that off. So I actually got to play the right program, even though I missed the satellite feed. So anyway, okay, one more. Jeez, I'm on a roll here. Used to be that Jeopardy would come down in one bulk satellite feed in real time. So we had to record it in real time. It wasn't like a file. Now they just send you a file. But back in the day, we had to record it off the satellite in real time. And so I think that was like Friday night or Saturday in the middle of the night or something. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was, 2.5 hours of recording for Jeopardy for the week. And then, the editors would cut it apart and, get it ready for broadcast, every evening. And so I recorded, the Jeopardy, and I knew I was going to be out at my dad's house, and he loved Jeopardy. And I knew I was going to be out there while he was watching Jeopardy. And you disturb him. You watch it with him. So anyway, I watched that Jeopardy 6 or 7 times just so that I had all the answers. I mean, all the answers for that one that was going to play on the night I was going to be at Dad's house. And anyway, so we played that, or they played that while I'm sitting there. Dad's watching Jeopardy, and I'd call out the answer, call out the answer, call out the answer. And I did that for the whole half hour. And he thought I was a genius until I told him what I did. I couldn't, but it was funny while it was going on. All right, enough of that. So tomorrow, what am I going to talk about tomorrow? Let me look at my little master list. Oh, yeah, we're going to talk about heating with wood. I don't know if any of you guys ever did that, but the whole time I was growing up, I didn't even know the furnace worked because we never used it. We heated with wood and the wood stoves. We had 2, one downstairs and one upstairs. The only time we ran the one downstairs is, when it got real cold, or if we wanted to go down there and do something, we'd fire it up. But yeah, we heated with wood the whole time I was growing up. So let's talk about that. Anyway, catch me tomorrow.